foot race to their sideline. Touchdown, Oregon!
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all wages, welcome to the show. This is the Oklahoma State-Oregon preview, and tomorrow is going to be at 12:30 at Autzen Stadium. Oklahoma State will play Oregon. Sorry about promising you that I'd be here on Thursday and going live on Thursday to preview the game, but I've had a lot of stuff going on. I had to have an emergency business trip up to Orange County that was sort of unexpected and sort of ate up a lot of the time. But I'm still going to try to get this to y'all before kickoff and before I have to go cover a game before kickoff. This is why I try to avoid doing it on Fridays because it's just a tightly packed day. So anyway, going into the second game of the season, 1-0 against Montana State. We're heading into Oklahoma State, and there was a little bit of supposed drummed up controversy. I don't really think it was necessarily that much controversy with Mike Gundy and Dan Lanning sort of tacitly exchanging sound bites about money and things like that. I'm under the impression, or I sort of follow the same sort of theory that a lot of people have, that Gundy was more trying to secretly, well, not secretly, but sort of wink and a nod at his own administration in terms of what it takes to build a program now in the quote-unquote new age of NIL. Clearly, Oregon has ramped up their investment in their program for going on 30 years now. Back in the day before NIL, it was often the facilities and the Mahovsky Center, and especially the new one now, but the old one, the uniforms, expanding Autzen in 2001, all those kinds of things. Because at that time, Oregon and Coach Bellotti realized that they did need to put money towards the program. Believe it or not, there was a time when the athletic director was essentially having to throw bake sales. Not literally, but basically the equivalent of it, to basically keep the lights on at Autzen, to keep the program sort of going. And then Phil Knight and Nike sort of took off in the, as we discussed in previous episodes in the history too, in the mid-90s or so, and it sort of put Phil Knight in the place to be that guy. And then it just sort of was advantageous to programs like Oregon. Now, Oregon sort of was the biggest beneficiary of sort of the rule change in college football regarding the NIL and such. And here's why. As the meme in the discussion before is regarding the SEC, they sort of, throw a key fob of a Camaro, and, I call it Camaros and co-eds, and a wink and a nod, and getting that blue chip athlete to go into their school. And, there is sort of a legacy thing in there. The SEC obviously has very successful programs, but it's no surprise that suddenly there's a little bit more equal playing fields with other conferences after, the under the table sort of era ended, and now the over the table era has begun. Now, unfortunately, with like the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, as a result of the Pac-12 trying to rebuild, and other conferences like that, they were unfortunate victims of the conference expansion and monopolization, we'll say, when that era sort of kicked off and they sort of fell by the wayside on that kind of thing. So there is that sort of double-edged sword with the consolidation of conferences, because that's where the money is as well. But basically, you had Oregon that was doing everything in Phil Knight's power to build the program from the ground up. I won't necessarily say the right way, because everything in the financial world has some discrepancies, but I don't really think they were necessarily trying to throw Camaros and co-eds at people under the table necessarily, to get those blue chip athletes to show up at their door. So when it sort of became legal, it was like, okay, well, we already have sort of the foundation of a very rich benefactor and heavy investment in the program. Let's just take it to the next step and the next level now that we can. And they did. Because even before the NIL and pay for play, we'll say, the more money you had, the better your program will be. Because, again, the biggest thing and the biggest reason why Phil Knight invested in things like facilities and things like that is because, one, Oregon's facilities before that were terrible. And, of course, it's very hard to recruit when you have terrible facilities. And you have people like USC who used to be perennial powerhouses and lived in LA and had better facilities. And for a time, Washington, too. And that was also during the era there was no scholarship cap. So they would just offer scholarships to all these people. And it was better to be a fourth string at USC and a scholarship than, slumming it at a place like Oregon at the time. So that was sort of the natural progression of things. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. And we'll also make a note about Chip Kelly being in trouble for NCAA violations regarding recruiting. And I think, Slick Willie, paying people to sort of recruit for him or whatever. That was just out of pure laziness, not corruption. Because as we've discussed before, Chip Kelly could really give a rat's ass about recruiting, and he always has been. So if he was able to just pay someone to do that job for him, he would. And I think that's more what happened, more than a Camaro and a co-ed thing. So Gundy necessarily wasn't wrong in the sense that, hey, his program needs more money to compete. And it sounds funny coming from the beneficiaries of T. Boone Pickens, of all people. But I think T. Boone had recently sort of died, and I think left most of that wealth to charity. So I think they did lose a large stream of income with T. Boone Pickens. Let's actually look when T. Boone Pickens died. Let's see. T. Boone Pickens. He died in 2019. And that kind of tracks sort of with the general trajectory of the program. They had a good year a couple years ago, but it didn't kind of work out. Sorry, my phone is ringing. It's been ringing off the hook. I'm going to leave that in. Jeez, all right. Phone's been ringing off the hook. Okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So T. Boone Pickens died in 2019. And so that kind of tracks with kind of the way the, unfortunately, the program has kind of gone. And, not necessarily, they had chances, to beat overperform, we'll say, I guess, or perform better, but they sort of underperformed in many ways. Okay, what is going on? Okay, let me go ahead and turn that off. My apologies. See, okay. Side sort of rant tease. I don't think cell phones were just a bad idea. I know I sound like a crazy troglodyte, but I don't care. The being accessed 24/7 is just bad for humanity. I should get a landline and just call that good. You want to get a hold of me? Leave a message. I'm tired of getting like random phone numbers too, and no one leaves a voicemail, and then someone's like, "Hey, I called you. What happened?" It's like, who are you? You got to let me know who you are first. Okay, I'm dodging bill collectors. Just kidding, but. So, so the main benefactor, the main person giving them money, T. Boone Pickens, died in 2019. Hasn't really kind of panned out well. There are people who will go as far to say that Mike Gundy made a lot of mistakes that sort of caused this issue with the program. But maybe, according to his sound bites, a lot of it had to do with his frustration maybe with the administrative side, and that you're putting us in front of people that are going to crush us because they have more money. We need more money to compete, so on and so forth. And so naturally Dan Lanning was asked about it. He sort of clapped back and basically said, tough luck, Buttercup, basically, or toughen up, Buttercup, and we'll just let the game play out as is. We're trying to compete, and that's also an unfortunate truth of college football, is that you do need money to compete. Sometimes it's where your money is best spent. I think I saw a stat a long time ago that basically said when teams invest the most money in their offensive line, that's usually one of the bigger indicators of a Super Bowl. So this was before NIL era when I saw that data. So it was about NFL teams. So when most of their salary cap is spent on offensive line, is usually a bigger indicator of their probability and likelihood of winning the Super Bowl, and it strongly correlated, at least. But so it's the same when money is in play in college football, is the investment in the team will provide greater results. I will be teasing that within the next couple days. I'm hoping to get together with my dad to record a show discussing just NIL in college football in general. I think it's very interesting. He was sort of in the middle of things when a team wins a championship or has success, and what it looks like when that athletic money intertwines with the actual academics of the university or the infrastructure of the university non-athletically. So that should be interesting, and his opinion on NIL and everything on that. He has a nuanced opinion in terms of that he does think players need to get paid, but there are some pitfalls, and so it'll be fun though to go in depth of his analysis on that from the angle of someone who sort of saw the actual money and where it went and how it was transferred, all that kind of thing. With that, will be happening within the next couple days and hopefully posted soon. I was trying to do that maybe today, but again, time has gotten away from me. I've had so much to do and so little time to do it. It's really kind of annoying, to be honest. But yeah, so I think, though, largely there wasn't really a whole lot of controversy regarding that, in the sense of like, oh, now it's a blood feud between Gundy and Lanning, although knowing Lanning, he'll probably use it as some sort of pre-speech fuel just to get everyone going and fired up. So think the money line will say is about 27 to 28 point spread. Oregon is the favorite. Of course, anything could happen on any given Saturday. But it seems that Oklahoma State is very outmatched, which was sort of the genesis of Mike Gundy's comments. I know that I think a big defensive player, unfortunately, will not be playing on Oklahoma State because of a larceny charge, I believe. And the starting quarterback is injured, so I think the backup is playing, and I think he's a third-year freshman. Not sure how you go about being a third-year freshman, but that doesn't surprise me in the era or leaving the era of the COVID eligibility timeline where you had 26-year-olds who are playing their 7th, 8th year in college due to both medical red shirts and then COVID red shirts, we'll say, happening. It doesn't surprise me to hear about a third-year freshman, even though 3 years ago was obviously the end of the COVID era for college football, we'll say. So, outmatched, it seems on paper, with Oregon. Hopefully, that is the truth of the matter in the sense that it won't be an upset. But again, any given Saturday, anything could happen. But again, the probability seems unlikely. So the idea of this game is to hopefully get even more pushback than you did last week against Montana State. And seeing how the team is developing into the next week, what it looks like from week to week, how the team prepares, some more reps and more pushback from maybe a little bit more talented team. Well, not maybe, a more talented team. I would say maybe more pushback in game plan from that more talented team, maybe. We'll use maybe in that context. And seeing if the secondary gets pressed a little more, because Oklahoma State generally is more known to throw the ball around more. So giving the secondary, the young, very young secondary, a more challenging chance at development and more reps, and just progress more on that resistance training of the squad in that way. Because obviously in a few weeks you have Penn State, and progressively your competition is going to get more stiff even until Penn State. So you're playing Northwestern next, which, okay, they're kind of a bottom of the conference team, but it's still a conference game, probably a little bit on the same level as Oklahoma State, maybe a little bit better. I'm not really sure about Northwestern this year. And then you have Oregon State, probably better than Oklahoma State, probably better than Northwestern. But still, they're also a program on kind of a down, on a peak, or a valley in the peaks and valleys calculation. And then you have Penn State and Penn State will have had a bye. So you're wanting to sort of progressively get that resistance training going for the younger guys to prepare them for the big game. And then you have the October-November stretch, which hopefully they'll learn isn't easy, even if the schedule might say so. I think Iowa, again, is another a potential trap game, even though it seems like their offense isn't that great. Again, as the Iowa tradition. But they're one of those teams that they don't drag you down to their level necessarily, but they will force you to play in their game. And what I mean by that is, even if you have an offense that scores 80 points a game on any competition, somehow they make it a field goal fest against them. And so how will Oregon respond to a team in a game like that this year with young guys? And then you have USC, who potentially is starting on the rise in November, and of course Washington in November. And you just, even as bad as a team is, like Washington has been in the past, they've been good, and they seem to be, I don't know, maybe building. They didn't really impress a whole lot of people in week one, but again, November's a long ways away. They can develop into a much better team too. But also like Oregon State, rivalry games are just different. Even if you've outclassed and outmatched and out-talented them, it's a rivalry game. So even for that so-called way worse team that's your rival, they'll treat it like a Super Bowl because it is. And they might play that way and knock you off. And they'll give you that bad loss or, annoying. I say bad loss in the sense of the bragging rights loss. So just expect and prepare for tougher competition on those games too. So it'll be nice to see if the talented squads like the young secondary are mature enough to keep up with not only playing well but consistency. So I'm hoping to see that secondary get challenged a little bit more against Oklahoma State, but perform at a high level. How will they react to that challenge? That's what I want to see. I obviously want to see Dante Moore in a setting that's more challenging, and how will he respond? Again, I'd like to see the running back room, see how that plays out a little bit more, and of course the receivers getting challenged a lot more too as time goes on in lieu of Penn State, because again, you can determine sort of how your receiving core is going to be for the big games in those big games, and you want them to show up and show out. As we saw yesterday, I was listening to on the radio, CeeDee Lamb on the Cowboys made some big drops that sort of cost Cowboys the game. They were still down, and if they didn't score, they still would have lost. But a big reason why they didn't score was because of CeeDee Lamb. So you want to see how these people will react to more pressure in terms of in the game, in the environment, in the setting, and how that talent sort of translates with that pressure. Because you definitely want your receivers to be ready for big games like Penn State and potentially the playoffs. And you want to see how the secondary will at the same time, because for now it's not for talent, it's for age and experience and veteran status that the secondary is quote-unquote the weak spot. With Montana, there were certain things that you wanted to see against a team like Montana State that you were happy to see, but overall, as a marking of the team, you couldn't really determine much out of the team and their identity from that, just because it was a game that was so outclassed and outmatched. So hopefully, like I sort of said before, we see more in the Oklahoma State game. But if the game turns out how everyone thinks it will, you're still not going to see as much as you'd like to see in terms of like, okay, Dante Moore can handle a high-pressure stadium a situation. He can handle Happy Valley, wide out, at night, annoying rap songs. What is it called? Mo Bamba. That song is annoying. Not rap songs, but I couldn't remember the name. Playing, people twirling white towels in your face, screaming at the top of their lungs. Luckily, Oregon has a bit of an advantage of handling loud noise with Autzen, but it's different when you're on offense, because when offense is at Autzen, it's not loud for you. But you want to see, okay, he's capable of handling that situation, because at the same time, his time at UCLA, as the schedule got harder, was the more time he sort of saw the bench. So granted, people's skepticism is still there. I think he took away a lot of skepticism against Montana State, but again, everyone's like, well, it's Montana State. So let's see how he progresses and how he turns out in games that aren't against Montana State. And this is no shade at Montana State. Like I said, last episode, shout out to them. Great program, great team. Taco Dollar, you're nicey, as John Gruden would say. And then, of course, when you get into conference play with Northwestern, you want to see more of that. I'm I don't know what kind of offense Northwestern runs. I haven't really seen much. I'm going to say they run more than a team like Oklahoma State. So again, you'd like to see how Washington does or Oregon does. I was thinking Amari Washington. How Oregon and Amari Washington does against the run against Northwestern. Definitely against the Beavers. Beavers like to have that running mentality, but an overall balanced offense. How will the defense react to stopping the run there? A mobile quarterback in Malik Murphy, and how is just the defense in total against a balanced attack, because Murphy obviously is considered like a dual threat guy. Because when you get to Penn State, you got Drew Aller, which I know some Duck fans like George Reister, former Ducks, aren't really impressed with Aller. But clearly, when he's focused and can play, he's able to carve people up, apparently, like he did in the Big Ten Championship against Oregon last year. And, of course, they have the running game that Penn State is well known for. So you're going to have to play defense against a very elite, balanced attack in Penn State. So you're wanting to see these things in these games in the meantime, and hopefully the competition gets better, that resistance training has built that sort of muscle endurance and strength while that happens. I don't know why I keep using the weightlifting analogy. It just seems to work in this situation. So you're wanting to see more as each game goes along. So with Oklahoma State, I want to see more, even if it's a blowout. I want to see more of how Dante is running the offense, throwing downfield, maybe in third down situations, how they are. I want to see more with the defense and stopping the run, stopping vertical passing. Montana State obviously wasn't really a vertical passing team. So here's your chance to press the secondary and see what kind of mistakes they will allow if they allow them. So how many explosive plays will they give up? Hopefully the least amount possible, if not zero. How will the D-line get pressure on the quarterback when you have a more vertical passing attack and not a quick throw game that sort of neutralizes that pressure attack? How will they in reading the run? The D-linemen, will they penetrate on the run much better with better competition? The linebackers, will they get a little more involved when the fact that against Montana State, Amari Washington or Mateo or Tatum already brought the running back down or sacked the QB before the linebackers could really do anything. So they didn't really show much in that game because they didn't really need to. They were kind of just there. And everyone else was sort of the D-line was sort of outclassing everybody. So how will the linebackers look like? What personnel is there? How will they be in certain situations and coverage situations too? Just seeing more out of them to see what we have, because we don't really see much with Montana State. So there's a lot that I'm hoping to see, that more gets revealed with Oklahoma State. Otherwise, it should be a fun game, a 12:30 kickoff. So it's a midday game with a sort of early end to it. And so you can enjoy the rest of your Saturday watching college football. And I look forward to it. And hopefully there's not too much media craziness created from the coaches' sound bites. I think again, Gundy wasn't necessarily taking shots at Oregon in particular, but it's fun for all the trash talkers to think so, and do it. Also, Dan Lanning sort of hinted that it was sort of an excuse, and many people sort of agree. Again, Gundy maybe made some mistakes in years past to sort of have the program keep up, and it's hard to say there's an acceptable excuse for that, but that's how it is. And I think like like a competing USC team. I think college football is better with a competing Oklahoma State team. And so you sort of hate to see teams that are generally successful, we'll say. Generally successful, like Oklahoma State, seeing a downturn in their program. I think a lot of people, aside from Duck fans, who might not necessarily be Duck fans, don't hate the Ducks, sort of feel the same way if the Ducks had like 3 or 4 years of just being terrible. People are like, you hate to see that. For a number of reasons, but should be a fun game to watch. We'll go ahead and watch it tomorrow, and we will then see how things go, and we will go over how things went when it has gone, and then we will see what will happen in the next week, among other Oregon and college football topics, and how those topics also relate to Oregon. I'm mentioning my interview with my dad. Be on the lookout for that. So like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below, and all the sort of YouTuber crap you have to say in every video. So yeah, I shall see you there, or I will see you on another time.